Hey, just letting you know quickly, the Tavern Talk video divided up into three sections. This is part two of three. Um, I didn't feel like viewers, and I probably wouldn't either if I was a viewer, want to watch a whole 5 hour video, and so I broke it up. I was gonna break it up into five sections, but I didn't like that really much because I'm not trying to inflate my video count. So I just decided to divide it up into three. I believe it's probably going to be three. I'm still editing. I'm actually working backwards. I always started out at the end and am editing forwards to the start. So we'll see. But I think it's going to be three, possibly four, but probably three. So enjoy. This portion, Zinadaz is in it. Level Russian is, he's still coherent and awake because he was getting tired towards the end, and just concentrating on staying awake at his job, and that's completely understandable. And we'll have him on again in the future, especially if you request it, you like it, you like them, you like what they have to say, and you like our interactions back and forth. They'll definitely be back. So look forward to that. So, without further ado, part two. Enjoy. Hello, YouTube. This is Saul Sunforged, Dungeons and Taverns. Today, we're starting up a new segment called Tavern Talk, where we're going to talk to players and DMs and get their unique perspectives that are different than my perspective on subjects that I have covered and subjects that I have not. Today, with us, we have again, lovable Russian who plays Foxodon Huval in the Dirty 20 campaign. And we have Yandere Girl 911 who plays the Doctor in the same campaign and is lovable Russian's wife. Hi, you two. How are you doing?
Hello, YouTube, and all you YouTubians.
Rolling a one should always be bad, in your opinion. Uh, in terms of combat, yeah, but it's not going to be something crazy. You know, it shouldn't be. It depends on the circumstances of what you're fighting, I suppose, or how you're fighting them, or if you had disadvantage and you rolled a one, or if you had advantage and they were both ones, or something like that. It's situational, really. But like I said before, uh, you know, it depends. It's very nuanced. But no, a one isn't always bad. It will introduce a complication maybe, but I don't consider that bad. I consider bad like unrecoverable. Like, oh shit, like, oh my god, we're gonna be fighting a dragon now at like level 5. Like those are, that's,
Yeah.
in my opinion, that's bad. Things that is character ending. I will never do things that would be character ending on a one. It would, like, for instance, in the campaign that we're playing now, the other player, Asgrim, he was crossing hand over hand, but with a rope across a crevice in the Underdark, and he rolled I think he rolled a one, and so I had him one hand slip, so he's still hanging out with one hand, and so I'm trying to have him recover, right? Because I didn't want him to fall down there, and he rolled bad again, and so I had him let go, and then I gave him a third and final roll for his acrobatics to see if he can maybe land in the water that I knew that they didn't necessarily know, but I knew that there was water down there. Okay, so I wanted him to roll to see if he can do something to make hit the water versus hit the land. Completely different situation, right? Hitting water versus hitting land. Although, I mean,
Yeah.
technically in real life, hitting water from a height is like hitting concrete. A jump from a helicopter. I know that. But, oh, Callie, did you? She did a poopy. So, yeah, but he failed twice, and then if he failed the third one, it would have been devastating to him. But he rolled a 20, and so I had him turn that failure into a massive success, and he did a somersault and did a pike dive right into the water, into the deepest part of the water, and he didn't take. I don't think he took any damage from that, or maybe I halved it. I forget exactly what the damage ruling I made there was, but it was a pretty big
Uh,
fall. It was like a 40 or 50 foot fall, I think.
Yeah.
And
I
Uh,
remember
what's that?
he took no damage at all.
Okay. Yeah. See, so I rewarded his failure because he had a success at the most critical time. He clutched himself out of a terrible situation because what was waiting down there for him is potentially a broken leg, battered armor, a broken neck with two. What did he?
Sorry about
There was
that.
two hook horrors running around down there, and a bullet. And then, when you guys went down there, you seen that there was some drow down there fighting Yanti and things. And he would have been down there, maybe unconscious with a broken leg, maybe internal bleeding, maybe, his armor would have been just junk, and it would have been that probably would have been a life threatening situation if you didn't rescue him real fast. Any of you have anything to add to that?
I apologize for the scream. I slipped on some mud.
I'm sorry, what was the question?
Rolling a one should always be bad. It
But
wasn't.
it doesn't have to be. The thing is, it's you have to play it by ear. It doesn't have to be bad to like an extreme, because I do like the concept that you're supposed to be playing a hero. You're supposed to be playing an experienced veteran character. Even at level 1, you're assumed to have some sort of knowledge and be very well experienced in what your skills are. Um, it used to be a thing in like earlier editions where rolling a 1 would have your spell explode in your face. Like, no, you're supposed to be too knowledgeable
Yeah.
for that. I mean, I agree that yeah, there should be some penalty, but I mean, like, if you're lock picking a chest and there's no trap, they've already confirmed there's no trap. I mean, the box shouldn't explode in his face.
Right.
I mean, or maybe his lockpick breaks, or maybe he bends it and he has to, jiggle it out of the lock, or maybe he jams it in there. That can be a type of penalty. But a lot of people, what I see a lot of, especially new DMs do, is they'll have it so that incredible, like, acts of gods would happen on a critical fail. And at the same time, they'll have these impossible things happen, with a critical hit. Like a natural 20 would be like, freaking God shows up and smites your enemies. No, that shouldn't happen either. That's why they have the critical rule. You just double all your damage dice. So say you're casting a spell, and you roll a nat 20 to, like, mesmerize an opponent or to cast a charm effect. It succeeds, and maybe, they're more susceptible to your commands, because usually when you charm a person, you can only give them simple commands. Well, now you can give them something a little more complex. Maybe they're more willing under that charm effect to take, that extra bodily risk, because they'll never do anything under charm effect that would cause them bodily harm.
Yeah.
It'll help them break the charm effect.
Right.
Well, maybe because you rolled a nat 20. Now that does that. It is a slight thing they can do. Like, it's always going to be played by ear, but you should never ever penalize your characters or your players heavily on a die roll, because it's such a slim chance of it happening that when it does happen, it discourages them from wanting to play the game.
Yeah. If you you don't ever want to try to screw your players over. Definitely not intentionally. Sometimes it might happen on accident, but usually if the players are screwed over, it's because the players screwed themselves over. What you want to do is you want to create a situation that adds pressure, adds tension to the situation, and that will therefore cause the players not to resent you, but to be more invested and engaged and understand that their actions have consequences. Yes, it's a game, but at the moment you completely forget that it's a game because it's so gripping and enthralling, and you do that based off of their decisions and the pressure that you add to them. Once you get to know your players and their capabilities and things like that, because not every level 5 fighter is the same. It's not going to happen. And so once you get to know what your players are capable of, you know exactly how much pressure to dial up and what they can handle. And you don't ever want to exceed that, except in moments where you let them know with ample warning that you're exceeding their threshold limit of what they can reasonably handle based off of your expectations of them.
Also, you don't
Go
want
ahead.
the whole butter sword situation happening where the fighter finally gets a hold of his sword and then just slips out of his hands like as if he has a pound of butter all over his body.
Yeah, and there and actually, it's not really related to that to what it's related kind of. It's okay. So when I was in the Navy, I had this dude who played in my campaign all the time, but he would always cause drama, try to sabotage the campaign, try to arrange coups in order to stop the campaign from happening. And if he didn't get his own way, he would cry and threaten to leave the campaign. That was back when I was a brand new DM, and I didn't know. I did. I didn't know. I thought all players acted that way because my only experience was all the people in the Navy, and they all acted that way, pretty much, except the officers. When the captain had me DM for him and the XO and things like that, they weren't that way, but they did try to use their rank outside of the game to influence things inside the game, and I didn't happen. It didn't happen, and I'm pretty sure that some of it was a joke. They're not going to send me the captain's mast over it and shit. But so this dude Garrett, he was lawful good. He was lawful good character who committed so many evil acts and very few good acts that he said, if I don't get a magic talking sword, I'm leaving the next session. And so I said, okay, we'll give you a magic talking sword. And you know what? I gave him an evil magic talking sword because he was evil, and the magic sword started controlling his mind, and it made him have to commit murder to innocent people because he was evil. He hated that sword. He hated it. I made him hate it so fucking bad that he never played evil ever again because he knew not to mess with me, because that's some bullshit that he pulled.
What was he thinking?
That's
that
like
he was gonna...
that's like a whole nother level of petty. That wasn't spiteful, by the way. That was petty because you weren't gonna let him get his way, and we do not respond to terrorism.
Right.
I will not
Yeah.
be. I will not be held hostage in my own campaign. I had a player do something similar to that in a previous campaign. I had let them tame a bugbear.
Mm-hmm.
So first chance he gets, he wants to start taming stuff in the game. And there was a situation where there were a bunch of like wild, like wolves, bears, and deers and stuff like that. They were fighting a druid, and this like malevolent force shows up, which instills fear into all the denizens of the forest in the area, which makes them want to flee. So he's trying to force tame a bear as a bard in this situation where the bear's only instinct is to flee. He does not want to sit by and make friends and none of that stuff. Well, he bitched and moaned for about an hour, and then finally he says, "Oh, my character commits suicide." And out of pure spitefulness, I go, "The gods bless you and make him immortal." He got up and walked away from the table. I did not miss him one bit.
Yeah. I mean, after the fact, thinking about the situation, 18 to 20 years ago, because I don't exactly remember the year that campaign took place. I think it was 2002. I want to say, but thinking about it, I should have let him go because at that time, that was probably my second or third campaign I've DM'd, and the first two were one shots. But thinking about it and how many players I had at the table in my living room, I should have let him go because, at that point, I don't think I was ready for 10 rules lawyers. And that's what I did.
Yeah.
So I should have been like, yeah, take care of yourself, guy.
You should have just been like, don't let the door hit you or the good Lord split you.
Yeah, the people in the Navy, I don't know. I guess the stereotype, and it's kind of true, is a lot of people who play tabletop games don't have the best of social cues and skills, I suppose. And so I kind of understood that, and so when they were doing the rules lawyering thing and stopping combat and stuff constantly to have this huge drag out debate, like I thought that was normal. I thought it was normal. but it didn't feel like it was normal, but it seemed like that's what everybody was doing, and they didn't have a problem with it because they all did it. And so, you know, it's just one of them things, man. But later on, I look back on it, and I should have kicked him out right away. But
Yeah.
I was new to D&D, and I was so freaking excited to play and to DM that I just let it go.
Didn't care.
Yeah.
Alright. Uh, so
You know,
Uh,
it's always gonna be like a ever-changing table for me, man. At this point, I'm just so what's the thing, like experienced enough with terrible players that it's become a non-issue.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't care for one person when I have a whole table of people that are excited to be there and want to play the game as is.
Yeah.
They're not gonna rules lawyer or argue with me on every single point.
Yeah. And
But I mean, that isn't to say that a lot of the stuff in my settings aren't up for discussion. Like, yeah, I'll sit there with the table if they're like, "Hey, this is unfair," and the general group consensus is that yeah, it doesn't work that way. Then yeah, we'll rework it on the spot and we'll figure something out. But I'm not gonna let somebody rules lawyer their way into winning the campaign because there is no winning.
no.
yeah, right.
You
right.
don't win at D&D. Like,
Yeah.
you don't sit there and win at D&D. D&D is not a I won. No, that's not how it's played.
Right. Right. And the what I was trying, I guess, what I was trying to say is that like for instance, some well, not some, a lot of a big amount of the players wanted to be like Harry Potter or wanted to be Legolas, and it just like sometimes it would be two or three people in the same campaign wanting to be the same archetype and the same character, and even would name their character the exact same, and then somebody else was like, I want to be him, and it's like it would like one campaign I had Legolas, Aeolus, and Maltrius, or I think, or Malthrius or something like that, and they were all the same. They were all the same person, and like that's like I don't know. After all that kind of stuff, it was the trial by fire. What
Yeah.
did I hate it? Yes, I very much hated it. But did it make me grow as a DM? Yeah, very very fast it did. Yes. And I guess I'm still appreciative of those terrible experiences. But will I go through them like that again? No, no. And it might sound cocky, but there's players out there who are eager and wanting to just get into the campaign real bad, and so I'm not going to keep a problem player in exchange for a player who wants to come in very badly. Even a brand new player versus a veteran. I don't care. I don't gatekeep. I don't do that kind of stuff. And you want people who are excited and ready to go. Anybody have any other thoughts? I think there's two more questions. I think.
I think the next one is thoughts on talking during combat.
Yes.
Yeah, because the other two were
Acceptable.
commenting on the coffin shop. So
Are you well? First, can I get clear? Excuse me, I hit my vape pen. I was about to cough. Can I get clarification? Are you talking about RP during combat or players table talking?
Uh,
There is a
Yeah.
huge difference. Like I don't mind the players kind of
RP.
RP.
I don't mind the players discussing combat outside of combat, trying to figure out what to do.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of it adds an extra depth of strategy for the players. You know, it gives them a slight advantage. So I don't mind them discussing like, hey man, you should use this spell next, or you should move here and attack this way.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really mind that. As far as the RP side, it's got to be short, combat-based conversation. I mean, like if you're in the middle of combat and your character notices something about the big bad evil guy, he's not gonna stop combat today. Hey guys, this is what's going on over here. No, he'll be like, hey, keep an eye out for this. Those kind of conversations are acceptable.
Mm-hmm.
in a role play type setting, because you're not going to stop in the middle of combat to discuss grandma's recipe, man. You're going to just, hey, you know what? This is happening. We need to deal with this situation. But again, as far as players discussing strategy and talking stuff out, I don't mind that so much because it lets me in on their strategy and how to counter it. So it's a double-edged sword, you know. You give them an advantage, but they're also giving you the advantage.
Anybody else want to weigh in on that before I do?
Something I heard someone else. Oh, okay.
Go ahead.
Something I heard someone else suggest is, so combat. Let's be honest. In D&D, it takes 30 seconds to travel 8 hours, but it takes out 8 hours to do 30 seconds of combat.
Yeah.
Hey, nobody said it was pretty.
And one thing that I heard, which I do like, the idea of, is at the top of each round, give your players all of 3 minutes to discuss what they want to do, right, for their turns. So that way, that's when they can strategize, right? But then after, everything goes back into it, that's it, right? Do your turns. Stop talking to each other. Stop, unless it's in character 6-second quips. Once you've used that 6 seconds, you're done.
What do you have? Oh, you more?
How do you feel about that? Because I think it's actually a good idea because, sure, you still have that synergy, but things are going to be changing all the time. Because that's what happens in combat.
Yeah.
In a perfect world, we would all have telepathy to each other and be like, I'm going here, you're go there. We're gonna, flake them, and then we're gonna cast fireball. I'm gonna do acid splash, and it's gonna make a giant explosion. Cool. In a perfect world, we would be able to say that and convey that strategically.
Well, see, that's another depth. That's another depth to conversation, man. Like if you're gonna talk about telepathy, actually, let Liz go first, and I'll come back to the telepathy thing after.
So, I actually want to talk about, the RP and stuff within, combat, because I actually like the RP side and stuff, and I think that if RP in combat, happens, it's awesome, because, the characters and players are talking to each other. I think that one of my favorite moments, and I vaguely remember it, is when Onyx, Anthony's character, and Raven, my character, were arguing every single time that it...
Oh.
Liz?
Oh, you cut it. Your voice cut out.
Sorry. So every single time we were arguing back and forth, like our characters were just arguing because they got into before they got into combat, they were fighting over something and basically arguing over it. Then combat rolls around and they're looking at combat like, okay, combat's here. And they're sitting there just aggressively yelling at each other throughout combat. And when it's my turn, I say something mean to Onyx. When it's Onyx's turn, Onyx says something mean to me. And we're just going back and forth at it and, yelling at each other and stuff. And, you're nothing but scum of the universe. I slash the demon with my sword. Oh yeah, you're a female dog. I shoot the demon with my bow. And we're just sitting there going at it, and then all of a sudden combat ends, and then we're just up in each other's faces, and we're still arguing and stuff like that. Because they kind of had this love-hate relationship, and I really, really loved the fact that during combat, which is usually the time where everyone at the table, and there's no one role-playing at all, everyone at the table is just silent. and no one's talking at all. Like everyone's silent. And basically everyone's like, okay, I roll. And some people might say one-liners, some people might be like, I cast invisibility and I do it with a flare or whatever. And it's like, okay. But mostly everyone's kind of silent and they're rolling dice and there's not really too much energy. I loved that moment because there was just so much heat, so much energy, and the knowledge of, am I gonna turn around and slash Onyx? Is Onyx gonna turn around and, fire the bow at me? Like, the tension between that, but also we're on the same side and stuff. Like, like, I felt it, and it felt great. And also, like, there was a bit of a crush on each other and stuff like that, but also they were arguing like an old married couple, so it was great.
You're still talking about it.
Yeah.
What did you
But,
what did,
yeah.
what did you have, Zeno, about the psychic?
Well, do you handle telepathy as
telepathy,
we're having a
excuse me.
full-blown conversation, or do you handle it as your characters can share images?
Oh, how do I handle it?
Yeah, like how would you do that in a sense? And it's not like how you handle it. Is that what do you allow? Because I mean, obviously,
I go off.
images and emotions can convey a lot faster than actual words. Because I mean, if a character's having a full-blown conversation, if that's the rules for telepathy, then
Yeah.
it's kind of hard to do that in mid-combat. It would still be the same thing, except it's non-verbal now.
So when it's their turn, if they're using telepathy, I allow certain things based off of their bonuses, like their intelligence bonus and things like that. And I have certain thresholds for certain things that automatically work for certain characters and things like that. But in terms of telepathy, I allow 6 seconds, and if they conveying emotions and things like that also, and additional information that is beyond the scope of telepathy, it goes off of their bonus stat. But in terms of role play during combat, I do like to have monsters that role play. Right now in the D Live Roll20 group, I don't do that as much because of the slower pace that we're going, and there's other people waiting to DM and things like that, and so I kind of let some of that stuff go for normal enemies, quote unquote, normal enemies and monsters. But the NPC enemies, they almost always will do something like that. And if they're intelligent speaking monsters, I may let them issue commands and things like that to each other and form tactics in their language. And then if the group knows that language, the monsters might not know that the group knows that language. I'll give that advantage to the party member. And then in terms of combat, because combat does take the longest, I allow characters after the round is over. And of course, again, the D Live group is a little bit slower in pacing, which is completely fine. But I have to skip a few things because of it. And so, what I usually do at the table is I use a categories sand timer, and I will flip it, and they have that amount of time in order to prepare. They have that amount of time in order to prepare, and so like I'll do things like, yeah, the help me brother, like I need speedy assistance, my friend, or somebody pointing out the enemy, look in the tree over there, or things like that, and then point out things things that are relevant to the situation, of course, and the enemies will if the enemies have a leader or something, they'll issue tactics, flank around, or hide, things like that. Just simple things. You're not telling your life story. It's about 6 seconds of talking, And
That's what I was saying would be like short, simple commands,
mhm.
or short, simple direction that your character would give to another character in game. I wouldn't say they were stocked. Like I said, they're not gonna stop and discuss Grandma's recipe from 3 years ago.
Yeah, yeah. Basically, the way I do it is at the very beginning of their turn. If they wish to say things, it's not a problem. But I have them say at the beginning before they do all their actions, and then I have it as if like they're saying it while they're going to or from well in their movement phase. You know, so that, like just like you would if somebody says, well. I don't want to stop and have to shoot and keep going. I want to shoot on the run. Okay, I mean, thematically, strategically in D&D, there's no real difference to that. So you're doing it while you're walking, you're strafing or whatever. However you're doing it while you're moving, and that's how I roll it. Was there any more questions?
I think that's all about it.
Let's see. What's the one question? What's the thing that happened right underneath
Oh,
talking during combat?
it's accidents happen even to heroes. Yeah, but you're
Oh.
telling me that a seasoned veteran is gonna swing his sword and then just drop it?
Yeah, yeah,
I'd understand if they relaxed their grip for a moment and they gave the opponent the ability to parry, and that would cause them to drop the weapon.
right.
But I mean, they're not gonna critically fail and then their sword's gonna drop and skitter across the floor 100 yards. Like, no, I'm saying you shouldn't heavily penalize your players in that sense. You should give them a chance to suffer the penalty and at the same time redeem themselves from it.
Yeah, yeah, that's pretty good. Except for ranged attackers, if like somebody's shooting a bolt or flinging a bullet, with their sling or whatever you have, if there's a group of players close to that enemy and they don't meet the enemy's AC, but they exceed the player's AC, it hits the player. And so it's a risk reward. Like,
Oh yeah,
are you sure you want to shoot that flaming arrow right into the melee with 3 of your players right there? Are you sure? Okay, go for it. Don't mess up. It's all up to the player. I don't take away player agency for nothing, unless I have before, but very very
accountability.
rarely. Yeah,
Accountability is a thing.
yeah. Be accountable for your actions, because if you do something and like if you fail and you succeed anyway, then why play? Like, if you're gonna pass everything, if you're gonna succeed at everything, just assume that you won the campaign, that, or quote one, you beat the bad evil guy if that's the story you're going for, or if you're going for the heroic sacrifice to save your party. Just assume that happened, and then you're good to go. You saved yourself potentially years of time, and you won in your head. Good deal.
The same person that had asked about accidents happen even to heroes commented just right now.
Collateral damage can be fun. Oh yes, definitely can be hilarious.
Can I say collateral damage that just happened in my campaign?
Oh, dude, you go first, and I'll tell the story of Polton. I'll never get tired of telling this story.
Bolted!
Wait, are you gonna say the collateral damage that is about to happen?
No, the one that you guys totally, didn't take care of, even though I made it clear to you guys that it happened.
Oh, yeah. Go ahead on that one.
So, the coffin maker shop, we're back at it again. Now, I made it so that way Anastasia.
I have to go to the bathroom real fast.
Okay.
You already know, so it's fine. Anastasia, one of Strahd's wives, has power over rats, right? And as such, there was one rat swarm in there to basically oversee and make sure that everything was fine. Then the adventurers came in. Then they blew up the roof of the coffin maker shop, and as soon as the sunlight hit, The rat swarm was just like, I'm taking the bones of Saint Andrew and I'm running, right? Because he has direct control over them.
Mm-hmm.
So it made it like outside, and they told the boy that can cast fireball to cast fireball on it. And he's like, okay, boom. I specifically told the players. And the next door house got on fire. They did nothing about it. As a result, for their next encounter, the authorities of the town were not there because they were dealing with a fucking fire. They could have had Ezek to help them with the Feast of St. Andrew, but nah. Instead, he was there putting out a fire. Collateral damage is fun, with consequences. Dumb nuggets.
That sounds like a fire that got out of control.
I got a question on Twitter, actually. Wow. Okay. So how do you handle failed skill checks? I think we already covered that. You might have not been here. I could touch on it briefly, I suppose. So it depends on what the skill check is for, like how crucial it is, how hard the difficulty the DC is, and how much lower than the DC you achieved, and then there might be an added complication, like you find the doors too heavy, or some say you're trying to sneak into a bank vault, okay? Well, the patrol happens to come by and see you. Now it turns into a role play session where you have to try to talk your way out of it. And I'm not going to let you roll your way out of it either. It's going to be active. You're going to do it. You're going to talk your player out of it. And that's what I do for that.
As far as skill checks go, it's not like, I mean, for instance, they say, like, I like the whole opening the box trope. They found the treasure chest, they've inspected it, they know that it's not trapped.
Mm-hmm.
They're certain it doesn't have any kind of magic to it. It's just a mundane box with some tools in it that they got a lockpick. If they fail the lockpick check with a critical miss, I mean, maybe, like their lockpick breaks, or maybe it bends in the lock, so now they got to take an extra skill check to get, to jimmy that bent lockpick out. Stuff like that.
Yeah.
It should never be an extreme penalty that they can't work their way out of, because
Right.
it'll discourage your players. I mean, nobody wants to go into a situation where they're opening a box and then it explodes in their face and kills half the party. No, then they're not going to want to go and open another box.
Yeah. I agree with that.
But skill checks are a little more, as opposed to combat, are a little more fun to play with, because you can have degrees of success and degrees of failure.
Yeah.
Maybe they do pick the lock, but it's an audible snap and the guard outside the door hears it. Or maybe they succeed at it so well that not only do they open the box, but they've managed to freaking keep the guard from being alerted, or they notice something else about the box they didn't notice before. It's little rewards and little penalties will make the campaign go very far.
Yeah.
That reminds me of a time, same campaign still, funnily enough. One of the players was trying to steal from one of the other players. Not to be malicious or anything, they had their own little personal quest. And so in the middle of the night, while they were at the inn, he snuck out, right? Rolled his stealth, cool, good. All right, lockpick the inn door, nat 1. You all get it unlocked, but there's a loud audible click. Other player, you wake up.
Yeah.
Like, sure, you can make them win. You did it, but
Right.
you did it, but
Yeah. You might open that lock, but you'll find that in the process of opening that lock, you broke it, and so it can't be locked again. And then so maybe somebody who's coming around the corner, or eventually will come there, or the homeowner, or wherever you happen to be, will eventually say, "Hey, you know what? This wasn't broke before. What's going on?" And then they'll go exploring, and then in the background, you do stuff for them, and it progresses from there. Because I find that like I like to put traps in the game, but not traps that you roll dice out of. Traps that you physically yourself with your team as a group figure out how to solve it. Some
Oh yeah. Yeah,
sometimes
go ahead. Go ahead.
some
No, go ahead.
okay. Sometimes I made like for traps. I've made like if it's a simple trap or something, yeah, you can roll, but they're not all going to be rolls because that I find that is very not that's not intuitive and that's just very boring. And then it just feels like you're punishing the players for playing your game. If you have them solve it with their brain power, then and they pass it, they feel like badasses. It's because they are, and you reward them. And if you put too many traps and things like that, then your players start feeling like you're trying to screw them over, and then they're taking an hour and a half to get down every single hallway because they're using their 10-foot pole to poke at the ground and at the ceiling and all this other stuff. And you're like, and then, and maybe there was nothing in that hallway at all, and then you're just like, oh my god, what the hell did I do to myself?
One of my favorite things to do nowadays is called the Nat 1 success. So let's say they're lockpicking a door into the inn and they rolled a Nat 1. I'll tell them, hey, you lockpicked it, but now the door doesn't shut all the way. Now they're inside the inn and a passing guard notices the door is open when it shouldn't be. Stuff like that. Like you can do stuff where it's like, it feels like a hefty penalty, but in that moment of like brilliant success, it works against them, but they get this feeling of they're making progress, which is the important thing. You want them to feel like they're making progress.
Like I did it.
Like
Oh, go ahead.
I don't know, no, I'm good. I'm grunting out of frustration because I keep getting whacked in this goddamn game.
Oh. Next question I have is, how do you deal with things like jumping and climbing?
The 5x5 rule. It costs you 5 feet of movement to go up 5 feet.
Okay. Oh, you're talking about like
So,
in combat?
In combat, yeah. So, for instance, if you want to jump 10 feet, it's going to cost you 5 feet per 5 feet that you jump. I mean, that's assuming that you have the acrobatics to jump 10 feet in the air. For most people, it's physically impossible, especially your brawnier characters. It would still have to be a skill check. Especially, I know it'll slow down combat to add an extra roll, but it's a detriment that you can't get around of.
Okay. Anybody else have anything to add to that? How you would handle jumping and climbing? It doesn't.
During combat?
No, it doesn't specify if it's during combat. Actually.
Oh,
Well, did
Because if it's out of combat, it'll still be like a skill check, and it'll be like a time constraint. So I'll do that. You can make the skill check to climb up quickly, or you can just take the 5 or the 10 minutes to climb up, or perform your action. But all jumps outside of combat are acrobatics checks regardless.
Oh, they said both.
wait, where did you see that?
Twitter.
Twitter.
Huh?
Oh my god, this thing is beating me up.
On my Twitter.
Oh, on your Twitter. Okay.
Yeah. My DMs are open. Slide right in.
Cool.
Yeah.
So, jumping and climbing either during combat or anything like that. Like I usually have them, make an acrobatics. And if it's non-confrontational or anything like that, obviously it doesn't absorb movement because, that's kind of pointless. But, make acrobatics and stuff. During actual combat, it will absorb a bit of your movement. Depending on how high it is, where it's at, and what you're in particularly trying to do and stuff. Like each and every little situation is different in their own way. And basically, if you're trying to jump over a like little hole in the ground kind of thing,
Mm-hmm.
and you're trying to get away from a bunch of goblins and you want to jump over it and to like kind of have them have to walk around it, giving you enough time to keep running,
Mm-hmm.
you know, it's going to take a little bit of your movement to get over that, which would, let's just say it's, like 4 squares wide and stuff. It would take up, what, however much movement that would be,
Mm-hmm.
and you would just jump over that. So,
Okay. Lovable, you got anything for that?
Generally speaking, climbing and jumping have their own rules,
Mm-hmm.
and as such, I usually just kind of follow it. You can't jump further than, of course, your walking base speed.
Mm-hmm.
You have negatives if you are starting at a standing or if you're running.
Mm-hmm.
And generally, for every foot, this is how at least I do it because Pathfinder does it this way, and I like it like that.
Mm-hmm.
For every foot,
Mm-hmm.
the gap is, or the jump is,
Yeah.
or for long jumping, it's 1-for-1. Basically, the DC, if it's a 10-foot gap, the DC is 10. Make a athletics or acrobatics, however you want to flavor it.
Mm-hmm.
Climbing, generally speaking, I don't like 3.5's climbing rule, where it's like every 10 feet you got to make a check.
Yeah. Yeah.
So generally speaking, I'll usually have like one, if it's a reasonable distance within your movement speed, right? But if it's
Mhm.
like however much movement speed turns it would take, that's
Mhm.
probably how many quote unquote checks you would get.
Mhm.
And all it would do is make you slide down or make it another one again,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
or something like that, unless it was like a huge detriment within a high pressure zone, like, I don't know, 10 orcs, chucking javelins at you while you're climbing up a 100-foot, rock face wall.
Mhm.
Like, there's some pressure in there. You might get hit. You might lose your grip. There could be a lot of things because now it's high pressure.
Mm-hmm.
It's really dependent on the circumstance of is it low pressure where you can take your time, or high pressure where you're just trying to get the frick out of there.
Right. Right. Yeah, that makes a pretty big difference. Exactly. Did you have anything else to say that?
Generally speaking,
It's pretty straightforward, man. It's just jumping and climbing is always pretty direct. It's always been kind of there. He is right though. Depending on the situation, I mean, there's always going to be a rule for it.
yeah, high pressure or low pressure.
So the way that I do it is, of course, it depends on if you're standing still with your jump or you got a running start. If you're standing still for your jump, I give you the distance of your strength modifier. If you're doing an acrobatic movement, I give you the distance of your acrobatic or your dexterity modifier. If you're taking a running start, you get the full plus. You get the full dice if you in feet, and if you are standing still, you get half of whatever you roll on the dice. So if you roll a 20, and you're standing still, you get to jump 10 feet plus your modifier, your strength modifier. In terms of climbing, of course, it depends on what kind of armor you're wearing. As to the DC, my players don't know this, and they're in the group right now. But I'll go ahead and say that everybody's DCs for almost everything is different based off of what their scores are, what their character is, and so it depends. Like if you're climbing a sheer rock face, is it wet? Is it moldy? Is it ice? Are you using pitons? Do you have climbing boots? Those types of things all matter. And then the way you're climbing, like if, for instance, if you're using the rope to climb across a ravine or something like that, are you walking on top of it like a tightrope? Dex. Are you underneath of it? Do you go in hand over hand like the monkey bars? Strength. Are you on the rope, army crawling with your legs secured around it? Strength. And according to your role, is how well you do in these things. Of course, just like everything else. But so those are my nuances. Off of it. Like I said, if your ability modifier is high enough, then I don't make people roll for certain things, because they're skilled in it. Like a rogue, for instance, they're skilled in it. If their specialty, the rogue specialty includes the second story work where they're able to climb up higher. And I think it's like you're climbing. It's not difficult terrain and things like that. Then it's if it's not that hard of a climb. If it's like a DC 10, they get it. If it's a DC 15, they probably get it. So it just depends on and I'm not going to have them roll for it. I'll just make it succeed. It happened because again they're heroes, right? When you first start out, you're not heroes. You're just trying to be a hero, and as you become a hero, those things get easier for you, and the DCs get a little bit lower because the proficiency bonus going up by 1 every 4 levels. I don't really care for. I think it should be a little bit better than that. I think it should be 1 like every 2 levels or every 3 levels. But that's me. I'm a fan of my players, and I want them to succeed. I want to throw challenges. Mm-hmm. I want to throw challenges at them, and I want them to truly, maybe, get confused and think it's me going after them. But I truly want them to succeed, and I play the monsters according to their intelligence levels and things like that. And so, there's that. No other. I have no other questions. Did you guys have anything else you just wanted to add? Yes.
This is more of a D&D 5e question, and I want just people's opinion about it.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
How do you feel about the intelligence score and attribute as a whole, as it being one of the most useless dumb stats in all of D&D 5e?
Mm-hmm.
And how to fix it? Because let's be honest, it kind of is shit.
Yeah. Anybody want to take that first? I don't mind going last every time. That's fine with me.
I'm gonna take my time on this one. This is
Mm-hmm. What do you got for us, Scandary?
I have. Does the doctor use intelligence?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So I have one character that uses intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
But literally, if I wasn't playing a wizard or anything like that,
Mm-hmm.
and I was playing something else entirely, because every other thing doesn't need intelligence, and the only reason why wizard needs it is because, that's what they use to cast the spells. But because almost, like all the skill checks and stuff like that don't need intelligence as much. Like,
Mm-hmm.
because you could very easily just be like, well, perception can just be suited for investigation and stuff like that. Like, investigation doesn't need to be a big thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Mm-hmm.
I kind of feel like because intelligence is just kind of a very underused stat in this edition, and because it's, the way that it is, I don't know how to fix it because I'm dumb nugget, but the only character that I do play as it, like, I feel like even then, the intelligence thing, I'm just like, it doesn't, like mesh too good, and I'm just like, I wish that it was like, better balanced, like how Pathfinder has it or some other system has it. Like I kind of wish that there was a bit more things for intelligence.
Right. Right.
I
Z-
find I find that making intelligence a more rewarding stat would be the better fix as opposed to making it do more or making it overpowered. Because you don't want to get stuck into a situation where you end up treating intelligence like a charisma. Like charisma, charisma's overpowered as hell.
yeah.
There's
Oh,
too
charisma is
many,
overpowered.
so you want to make it so that those skills are more useful, more applicable. Because the problem isn't that intelligence sucks as a stat; is that it's not an applicable stat. Not a lot of the checks or a lot of the things you do in a campaign rely on the intellect stat. Like
Hmm.
insight's always going to be a big thing for me, but a lot of people don't realize that insight's an overlooked skill. Intelligence can also be applied. Like a lot of people don't realize, like you have a wizard in the group, right? And you can use the intellect stat on that guy to do more role play things with it. It doesn't necessarily have to be an in-game fix to make it a better stat or to make it do more, but you can have it be a more an RP thing. Any of the stats can be done that way.
Hmm.
Why would you want to take a stat that you feel isn't worth it because not everything sucks and then immediately go we should fix it this way instead of making it like an RP thing. Make
Hmm.
it a more rewarding experience in that sense because then you end up having the situation where players who want to play the smart character feel like they made the wrong choice. And it's not their fault. It's literally the campaign settings. Even the modules in D&D don't rely on any intellect skill checks. They're very rare, if few and far between.
Hmm. I I use intelligence a lot for well, as a player, I play up or down according to their intelligence, and that forms my my backstory, my personality, how I act and treat other people, things like that. Maybe my character might not, know that. For instance, if you have a lower intelligence, my character might not know that when you go into the court of a king, you bow and things like that, and they may not, and they might get in trouble for it, and that's fine because that's how I'm playing them because that's their intelligence. Uh, in terms of as a DM, I like to use tool proficiencies quite extensively because I write out guides for every profession that the players express interest in. But beyond that, I also for their languages, they get their starting languages, and then if they have an intelligence of like, say for instance, they get two starting languages. If their intelligence bonus is a 3, that means they have one extra language they can learn, and they role play through that to learn that language by using their downtime activity in gold or resources or a quest even for somebody to teach them an additional language. Um, in my campaigns, and again, the D Live campaign, I didn't at first. I didn't know it was going to happen because it was like, yes, it's going to happen, and no, it's too many people are dropping out. I'm going to stop, and then all of a sudden I had an influx of people again. So I was like, no, okay, it's going to work. And then I was scrambling to make my rolled maps in Incarnate because when we first started, I made my maps in Microsoft Paint, and so I had to design my whole world and everything like that in the cities and everything in Incarnate in the world map, and then all that kind of stuff. And so yeah, so the intelligence they get an extra language or two or even 3, depending on what they start out with. The tool proficiencies, it determines how many tool proficiencies they could get. That's also role played out. If they already start out with 1, but they have 3 intelligence, they can learn 2 more. For wizards or sorcerers or things like that, I use mana points or spell points if you prefer. And so if you have a +3 to your intelligence or to your charisma or to whatever stat your magic is based off of, depending on what your class is, you get that many extra skill points. So essentially, as a mage or a wizard, depending on what edition you're playing, you get basically a extra third level spell for free because you're smarter, and so you have the extra capability to do it. Or you could cast 3 of the first level spells, or an extra first and an extra second because you have 3 points. So it's up to you, and not up to Wizards of the Coast to determine your spell slots. It's up to you to take those points and use them how you wish to.
By the way, I love the mana point system. I absolutely and utterly love when I switched over to it because I felt almost completely useless up until I switched over to the mana point system. And now I feel like, as
Oh
useful
God.
as any of the other players, if not more so. And I feel very much like necessary. Because some of my spells back then, yes, they came in niche situations, but it's like I had to sit there, reserve, and then like do a lot of cantrips because I was like, well, I gotta conserve these spell slots for, doing other things and stuff. But when we switched over to the mana point, it was so much better. So, like, I feel so much more useful as a wizard, and I wish that, like, everyone else was doing mana point systems because it makes the person feel more useful.
For the next campaign, I plan to refine it and improve it even better, and use it eventually so that you could create your own spells or alter the spells you have. It's like if you want to be a wizard, okay, but you don't want to cast fireball. You rather fucking cast a ball of ice instead. You can switch it up, and you're gonna do cold damage instead of fire, and that's gonna be all based off of your intelligence.
Well, I guess I'll be the one doing that system because I'm the wizard.
Yeah, and I plan on having a system for you to combine spells, and I'm trying to make a system that you could combo with party members and things like that. And the more you combo with them, and
That
Wombo combo.
that's something that, oh my gosh, I've been wanting to do stuff like that for a very long time. Basically, um, where someone fires off an arrow and stuff, and then like the wizard just lights the arrow on fire, and then the bard like directs like one of his spells on that arrow, and this arrow is just getting more and more and more buff and stuff like that as it's coming towards the big bad evil guy and stuff. I would love to do that,
I'm
but
I'm just saying, right? As you were saying that, I was just imagining. Well, that's the caster. What about the fighter? And I'm just imagining it goes like it goes by him, but because he's so strong, he hits it on the back end of it and makes it go faster. I'm just like, this is dumb now.
Yeah, and
I mean the barbarian could just toss a rage over on it. It's an angry arrow.
and I'll probably. I mean, I'm glad you like some of the systems I plan on putting in place and things like that. But so just so it's a surprise to the YouTube viewers, I'm gonna probably edit all that extra stuff out so they could watch it and be like genuinely surprised by it, I guess.
Yeah.
What was I gonna say? I forgot what I was gonna say. I forgot what I was gonna say.
Well, if I could tack on something while you remember.
Oh, I do. Okay, go ahead.
There was one of my favorite moments, again with Onyx and Raven, where it felt like both of them were comboing in a sense. Raven had wings, and she was an up close and personal fighter, and she had a flight speed. Now, Onyx, he can't really, get everywhere at once and fire his bow off. So she used to scoop Onyx, have him in one arm, have her sword out, and have Onyx be firing his bow. And when something would come close, whack! and whatnot, and they would just be like, combo fighting, and they would be up in the air. And it was just so nice the way that they worked out and stuff. Like, we had a lot of nice moments in that campaign, but I'm gonna say this, it wasn't my favorite campaign in the world. It was bordering somewhere at the bottom.
It was boarding somewhere in the bottom, but
I
Onyx and
absolutely,
Raven made the campaign.
yes, Onyx and Raven actually made the campaign worth going to.
That's awesome. I you know, as a DM, but yeah, especially as a player, I enjoy when other players and like if I have a player at a group that I'm a player in and they're really good like at role play for instance, like that makes me want to come back more and like you know obviously if the DM's better, that if the DM's fair, that makes you want to come back more. And that's why I don't punish the players for things because I want players to come back and I want players to remember my campaign for at least a little bit of time, hopefully. And what's that? Go ahead.
Actually, with that in particular campaign, there was something that I got told way later into the campaign, something discouraging about my character and Anthony's character, is the fact that everyone else at the table, uh, uh, I don't know what the DM's opinions were on it, but didn't like Raven or Onyx at all. They did not like these characters, they hated these characters, and they did not enjoy these characters at all. And I'm just sitting there like,
Say that again, Liz.
so supposedly, Sean,
Uh-huh.
he didn't like the characters. Now, Nick, he didn't weigh in on his opinion at all. But supposedly Sean did not like the characters and whatnot at the table.
Uh-huh.
And that's because he decided to play a mute bard. And I thought it was going to be an interesting and great concept playing a mute bard, and I was excited for it. The way I thought he was going to be playing the mute bard and the way he played the mute bard was two completely different thoughts. I okayed it because I was thinking it was going to be similar to my mute bard. Basically, overly expressive, massive facial expressions, uh, getting people's attention, and basically writing things down, trying to like grab people's attention, and just like very, very like in your
So
face
being the
expression.
face of the group.
And then he decides that on top of being a mute bard, he's going to be a shy, meek girl and not be expressive at all. So he got the treatment of actually being a mute person in real life, and he didn't like getting the treatment of being a mute person in real life. Which is, they acknowledged the mute person when they were expressive and tried to interact with the party. But when they were not trying to interact with the party or anything, it's like, you're not trying to interact with us, so we're not going to interact with you. And because we didn't interact enough with this character, and because I guess the love-hate relationship between Onyx and Raven was just too much for them, they didn't like that, and I'm just like, okay, like, I don't know what to tell you. I mean,
also
Like,
something where like players need to be more verbal about the going ons in any campaign setting or any game. Like you have to talk amongst yourselves. Like, hey, you know what? I don't like the way my character's going. I don't like that this is happening. Like if he didn't like the way he was being treated or the way the game was going, he should have voiced his concern. He
he
can't just.
voiced his concerns to the DM, but basically
You
told the
need to
DM,
talk. That's a group thing. That's not a
yeah.
DM thing. That's a group thing.
But basically, the DM, after Sean just stopped showing up to the campaign, the DM finally told me about it and said, "Hey, he actually doesn't like your characters at all. He actually hates both of them." And I'm like,
That's a
Not like we do.
situation. That's a situation where it was like that's a him kind of problem. Like it always comes back to like again, if you have concerns or issues with anybody's characters doing anything that you don't like, say something. I mean, if I'm doing something that upsets you, let me know. It's not fair to anyone at that table, especially your DM, to put him in a situation where he has to alienate one or more players.
Yeah, yeah.
like,
Like honestly, this is the first time I'm hearing of it. I just thought Sean did his normal, typical, D&D burnout and was just gone.
so
I didn't know that he hated.
he did his normal typical D&D burnout and then he was gone. But throughout that entire time, I guess he was assuming that we were supposed to pull him in and interact with him a bit more. And I mean, yeah, we should have tried, but at the same time, um I think that he should have also put forth, because at that point he was a veteran player. He should have put forth more effort into getting his character involved in certain conversations, certain
Well,
things.
that's actually another like very deep-seated conversation that has to happen. It's again, you're setting expectations both as a DM as a player should be always established at the beginning of the game. Hey, this is my champion. This is what I plan to do with him. This is what I expect for him.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I was, like, I assumed and I shouldn't have, but then again, I was actually super excited because Sean doesn't really play too many expressive characters. So I was actually excited for him to play a mute character because that means that this character is going to have to be more expressive, more involved. But he did the typical thing that he always does, and because this character didn't talk, he excluded himself fully and utterly from the campaign instead of being super expressive. And I'm just like, okay, this is fine.
Well, I mean, it's again, it's setting up the expectations of the players and your DM. Like it's something that's always got to be discussed because you
Yeah,
don't
session zero.
know. Well, not even session zero, just it has to be discussed at one point or another. Like, hey, you know what? My character, I planned for this, and this is not happening. Like, it can happen. That conversation can happen at any one point. You just can't expect everyone to be on the same page as you.
No, you can't. And I wasn't aware in my own head that there was another way, I guess, to be playing a mute bard, but he surprised me and played a mute bard that was a wallflower. And I'm just sitting here like,
Like again, that's also like another debate to have. Like what as a DM is one of your biggest flaws in game. And a lot of times I see a lot of experienced DMs as well as new DMs tend to favor one player over the others and then kind of like centralize them around the story and you end up in the situation where players feel left out or not involved. So how do you round robin pick your players to be involved in your story in your campaign? Yeah, that's like a big old debate for another time because I feel like
yeah.
that conversation would just drag on forever.
Sorry, I didn't know you were asking me. Were you asking me, or were you just saying that?
No, no, no. That was just a generalization, man. Like
Oh, okay.
that's a talk we can have another day, bro. Because I feel like that one would be a very long-winded talk.
Yes.
How do you set up player and DM expectations, and then how do you how do you remedy something like that midway through a campaign? You know, because I get it. I've had players like that who feel left out, who don't feel they're getting what they expected to get out of the game, but then at the same time they don't say anything until it's too late.
So I think that it's very important to talk to every single one of your players and basically ask them individually. I know that this is a lot for a DM, but ask them individually, like, how did you like the session? Was the session good? Are you, like, basically, especially the quiet ones. The quiet ones you need to, like, direct your attention to the most. The ones that are the loudest, like, and the most expressive, yeah, it's fine. It's fine. You don't need to like go out and message them and stuff like that. Like shoot them a message maybe every once in a while and be like, "Hey, you doing good in the campaign? Yeah, okay, cool." But the quiet ones, the ones that are the ones that do
Well,
like
it
little
doesn't have to
things.
be like necessarily the quiet ones. Like again, you have like a group of friends that you play with, and not everyone gets the same thing out of every session. Not everyone goes into the game expecting to play the same way.
No.
Like, so how do you deal with, a group of players 14, 15 games in and someone's unhappy with the campaign?
Uh
It's again like that's a conversation that has
yeah.
to happen, that can happen at any given time, and it shouldn't be a situation where you have to force your DM into picking one player over another. It's unfair. It's unfair that one player is not having fun, and because they're not having fun, the game has to change to accommodate them.
Well,
At the same time, like if I have a problem with a player role playing or behaving a specific way, whether it's in game or out of game, that's a conversation that's going to be had at that moment. It's not something that needs to get put off because again, it's never going to be fair to one person or another. But if the conversation is had and everyone comes to a consensus or a general like agreement, it will never be a problem.
I actually, I actually kind of disagree with that. I
Yeah,
feel
no, yeah, go.
I feel like if you talk to players about things like that, where like you feel like somebody's hogging the spotlight, for instance, or somebody's, I feel like if you confront them about it right then and there in the session, it could lead to a lot of problems, including
yeah.
ending your campaign or losing friends permanently, actually. And I've actually had
Well,
experience with that. I feel like those types of situations need to be handled delicately out of the session with the DM, and then if the DM feels like the other players are adult enough to handle not being the me
Main character.
right, then you can have a discussion with those players because they might
oh
not
yeah, yeah.
they may
I'm not
not
saying like
realize they may not
I'm not
realize.
saying like, yeah, I'm not saying like drop what you're doing and get confrontational. That is a situation that has to get remedied as soon as possible.
Yeah,
And
I mean,
it's always, like I said, it's always going to be something that you have to discuss and get, kind of gauge how everyone's feeling, and ensure that everyone, it has to be a relative safe space.
yeah, yeah. I could agree to that.
And the DM needs to actually not particularly take sides, but more play mediator at that point
Yeah,
between, you know, both parties if you bring
Well,
both parties
it's
within
it's
it.
not about being a mediator. It's about mitigating damage because the thing is, someone's feelings are always going to get hurt, regardless of the situation. Someone's going to feel left out, neglected, or attacked in some instances. And it's like Soul said, it's always going to be a very delicate situation. Someone's feelings are always going to get hurt. But if everyone stops and realizes that we're all adults, we can all sit and discuss these things and have, very fair and very open conversations about everything. Yeah, we can be like, hey, you know what? I feel like, this is happening, or someone's being too eccentric. If they can tone it down a little bit, again, be very accepting, be very open to changes, because yeah, some players might have an idea for their character, or they might have an idea that, or like I said, have certain expectations for the game, and it would be unfair, you know, for me who's having fun in the game, and for someone who's not having fun in the game, for me to be like, well, it sucks to be you.
Yeah. Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. That would be a problem player at that point. I feel. If they don't.
It's also too, like, it's also too, the thing is that I don't, I very rarely play with new players who I don't have some sort of relationship with, whether we're mild acquaintances or I know them as a friend of a friend. Everyone I know through somebody, and we have some sort of relationship. So I feel like they can be open with me and I can be open with them to an extent.
I can agree to that. Real quick before anybody else says anything, I have 3 new questions. No more questions over Twitter. If you give me questions on Twitter, they're going to be for the next tavern talk. And but if anybody on D Live has questions, I'll answer those also. Well, we will all answer those also.
Quick, put your questions in now.